The City of Los Angeles Emergency Management Department has received a sizable donation of masks from PPE distributor AIM Brands LLC. The City of LA notes the first donation distribution will be aiding passengers who utilize the LA Department of Transportation's transit system. C19 Coalition, a national unified leadership response to the urgent shortages of PPE, are largely responsible for connecting AIM Brands with the City Emergency Management Department.
Although the vaccine is here, the challenges of distribution and getting it into the arms of people will mean that we will have to continue to socially distance and wear masks for a while longer. So these donated masks will come in very handy in keeping everyone safe on our buses.
LA Police Chief Michael Moore and others unveil another new facet to the department's renewed focus on public safety. The LAPD Alternative Dispatch Program involves sending out civilian personnel to mental health calls that are nonviolent and other calls that do not involve any type of criminal activity. The program also provides a means for residents to submit online reports of fender benders where there is no personal injury. The program is expected to help streamline city services and offset shortfalls in LAPD's budget and manpower. Cal Recycle, the statewide agency charged with resource recycling and environmental stewardship, has awarded a grant to the Los Angeles Department of Sanitation and Environment. This grant, totaling nearly $500,000, will be designated to improve the livability and quality of life throughout the city of Los Angeles. These improvements will focus on illegal dumping removal. The grant will also aid LA Sand with decreasing the community blight and increasing public awareness. North Hollywood High School won the virtual Los Angeles Department of Water and Power 29th Annual Science Bowl Regional Competition. Each year, the LADWP Science Bowl chooses a different theme that highlights an important science, technological innovation, or individual. The theme for 2021 was Saluting Medical Professionals, Scientists, and Essential Workers Combating COVID-19. North Hollywood High School was also awarded the first place Melinda Rowe Memorial Trophy. The annual Science Bowl affirms LADWP's commitment to LA City's youth and the educational community.
Councilwoman Nithya Raman has enlisted the volunteer workforce that helped her get into office to continue community outreach in District 4. And because there are so many underutilized city resources, she's on a mission to make residents aware of the numerous constituent services available.
Improving the process of providing services for residents has really been our main focus to what we really want to deliver, which is impeccable city services. There's always going to be some constituencies who are far more knowledgeable and who are able to take the time and the energy to really make demands on their city government. But we know that there's so many who are rarely in touch with the city, but it's not because they don't have real and pressing needs. And so to address this head on, to address this issue really head on, I think we decided that we wanted to use the incredible volunteer base that had stepped up during the campaign and who stepped up because they were interested in making the city a better place, to utilize them to expand our capacity to do that proactive outreach. And I think our office can do a really good job of acting as a bridge to city resources, to state resources, to county resources, to federal resources. We've had over 1,000 people sign up, which is, I mean, it's mind-blowing. And it's 1,000 people who all want to make their city better. We're starting by calling constituents who are 65 and over. This initial stage is focused on making sure that people have the tools to get vaccinated. You know, where to go, how to get it, if people are having trouble accessing it because of mobility issues, that we're connecting them to pilots that the fire department is doing that's actually bringing vaccinations to the home. You know, those kinds of connections can't happen unless we reach out and make sure that people know what they're entitled to. We've also compiled a lot of COVID-specific resources in a bunch of different categories that aren't necessarily health related, but address issues that are product of the pandemic, whether it be rent relief, whether it be small business support, food banks. Our callers are going to be connecting people to that information when they call out. I do want more people to know that the city becomes better when you call on us for help. because the city is organized right now to respond to the needs of people who are calling in. And so the more of you that call in, the better we can do at serving you. And the more that we do that, I think the more that we can build the city that we really deserve here in Los Angeles.
Are you one of those people who likes to build stuff? Are you into community building, literally? Well, before you lay any bricks, you need to make sure your plans mesh with the needs of the community. Enter the Department of City Planning. They are making it easier than ever to build with confidence and compliance.
The Los Angeles Department of City Planning's main functions include current and long-range planning to ensure that future development is aligned with the needs and goals of the city's general plan. The department is responsible for preparing and maintaining the city's general plan, which is a policy document that offers guidance on land use. The general plan is implemented through zoning regulations called the Zoning Code. Zoning is an important tool to create well-planned communities and to regulate the size and scale of development projects. The online application system portal was created in 2018 to allow applicants to file city planning applications online. When the pandemic started in March of 2020, City Planning went into overdrive to develop 14 additional online applications in order to keep our virtual doors open to the public. So OAS is also aiding in the economic recovery of the city, including small businesses and homeowners that have been hit the hardest. Requesting permit clearances for any project, big or small, located in redevelopment and overlay areas through the OAS system has never been easier. City Planning saw these application types as an easy and effective way to help local businesses during the pandemic. We plan on expanding these services in the months ahead to offer more planning services, including administrative clearances for accessory dwelling units. The best way to get information about the OAS system is by visiting the City Planning website at planning.lacity.org.
Councilmember John Lee has been leading the charge in finding small business loans for shopkeepers of District 12 from the very beginning of the pandemic. And while the small biz loans already had a unique repayment policy, one business is paying their loan back in the form of hot meals to hospital workers.
What we have today is another example of a program that we had in CD12 called the CD12 Business Relief Fund. No interest loan for small businesses ranging anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000. We partnered with a restaurant in our district who applied for this loan, a restaurant that is a landmark in Council District 12, Los Toros Restaurant. And instead of having them repay this loan, the way they're going to pay it back is by giving back to the community.
Councilmember John Lee has generously helped coordinate a meal donation for our ICU and emergency room staff. The emotional toll on top of the physical of caring for truly the sickest of the sick patients truly is draining physically and emotionally.
It's taxing, mentally and physically. Working with patients who are sick, working in fear of actually bringing this disease home to your own families. But we power through it, work as a team, and with the support of our community and our elected officials, we're able to get through it.
Vamos a decir agradecidos del trabajo que hacen aquí en el hospital y queremos mostrar esa gratitud por traerles de comer.
Siempre mantenernos seguros. Seguimos luchando contra la pandemia, manteniendo nuestras máscaras, manteniendo la distancia. Juntos podemos lograr por fin ver la pandemia terminar.
Any level of support just helps reinforce the strength that it does that is needed to continue on.
In the past year, with the general election and the summer of protests, it seems like America is divided more than ever. Simple human interaction has become strained for lots of communities in Los Angeles. So Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez and Councilmember Mark Ridley Thomas have put their support behind Kerman Maddox, the creator of a powerful new campaign that encourages us all to just say hello.
What led me to start this movement was right after the murder of George Floyd in 2020. I noticed there was a lot of division in the nation, and that included California and frankly, Southern California. And I noticed as I went through my daily activities, I was purposely saying hello to people, waving to people, acknowledging people. And I was purposely doing it to people who didn't look like me because I felt the tension here in Southern California. And what struck me as odd is the number of people who did not respond to my nods, my waves, or me just saying hello. They looked the other way, they'd ignored me. And I just thought that was really odd. So the whole concept was to just come up with a slogan that says, just say hello to people who don't look like you. Just say hello to people who are different from you, with the point of building a human connection.
At a time when everyone is going through so much struggle, we forget that a very simple gesture of saying hello can help immediately change that level of engagement with people.
This is an effort for Los Angeles to acknowledge its own diversity and at once to appreciate the commonality that makes us a city with tremendous assets.
We have USC and UCLA, crosstown rivals who don't agree on much, but they agree and support the Just Say Hello campaign. We got Amazon as a corporate partner that helped us raise money. We have Council Member Mark Ridley Thomas, Councilwoman Monica Rodriguez, USC, UCLA, Skanska Construction Company, and things are just building. This is just the beginning. Common decency is a good thing. When you see people of color and people who don't look like you, say hello. Acknowledge that they exist. They're human beings as well. So fundamentally, what we're trying to do with this campaign is get the word out, motivate people, and get people to acknowledge each other and just say hello.
Many people know that there are zoning rules for where folks live and businesses can operate. And another unfortunate truth is that not all neighborhoods are created equal. In our featured story this week, we meet another member of the city planning team, Faisal Roble, the racial equity officer of LA City Planning, zoomed by to talk about the history of zoning inequity based on racial bias and how Los Angeles was in the forefront of addressing the problem.
As the Chief Equity Officer for the City of Los Angeles, the largest department in the country, it is a very challenging assignment given the history of zoning in the United States. Los Angeles has played a significant role in pioneering the drafting and adapting zoning in the 1920s. That's exactly the same time blacks were leaving the South, moving to the North for industrial jobs. And what had happened is that the zoning that was practiced at the time did not really anticipate nor work it or give blacks and people of color the amenities that they wanted in their neighborhoods. As a result of zoning, after a few years of looking backward, we have Los Angeles City as one of the first cities in the nation to have adopted zoning, have resulted in neighborhoods that are unequal. Some neighborhoods are well planned, others have not been, and that is the challenge. At the wake of the murder of George Floyd in May 2020, Mayor Garcetti was one of the first elected officials in the country to react to that incident and right away issued Executive Directive number 27, which ordered all departments to come up with an action plan to address racial justice and equity in the city. We recognized that for many, many years, the neighborhood is occupied by blacks and people of color did not have enough access to groceries that dispense. They did not have enough medical facilities in their neighborhoods. So all the shortages, if you will, have finally contributed to the issues that we have seen with COVID-19 and attacking people of color in a very disproportionate number. So I think Planning will have its work cut out, but it would require also the collaboration of many key departments in the city.
It's a 5-museum collaboration to showcase the work of a famed Dutch artist. Rembrandt in Southern California is the virtual gallery featuring 15 paintings by the celebrated artist. This collaborative exhibition offers a unique guide to exploring his significant works and provides information, suggested connections, and points of comparison between each of them. In addition, the virtual exhibit provides insight into the rich holdings of etchings and drawings on paper by the master in museums throughout the region. Be sure to check out Rembrandt in Southern California. Visit RembrandtInSoCal.org. The LA Public Library invites you to delve into the diverse personal histories of 12 Angelenos of color. Hear their oral histories in the LAPL series Shades of LA, a search for visual ethnic history. You can listen or read in their own words what it was like to be a minority in the early 20th century and hear their reflection on how things have changed from the perspective of an African American, Mexican American, Samoan American, and several others. Many of the testimonials are accompanied by personal photos that are also part of this unique 6-year project involving thousands of family photographs throughout Los Angeles. You won't want to miss Shades of LA, a search for visual ethnic history. You can check the collection out free of charge. Just visit tessa.lapl.org and select Photo Collection. The LA Public Library Online is proud to bring you Photography Basics with Katie. Participating teens don't need a fancy camera to capture beautiful images. Learn the basic compositional tools and techniques to take great photos with any camera. This online workshop is open to teens 12 to 19. Don't miss Photography Basics with Katie, Thursday, March 4th, beginning at 4 p.m. To take part, please email teens@lapl.org from your school email address at least 1 hour in advance of the program to request the program link. And that's a look at some virtual things to do.
That's it for this edition. I am Natalia Bilbao, and from all of us here at LA This Week, thank you so much for joining us. A reminder that you can catch us online at lacityview.org. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. See you next time for more LA This Week.
Okay, good morning and welcome to the Los Angeles City Council. Today is March 2nd. I'm Nuri Martinez, the President of the City Council. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Blumenfield. Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield present.
All right, I'll talk to
Thank you. Bonin.
Bonin present.
Buscaino.
Here.
Cedillo.
Here.
De Leon.
Here.
Harris Dawson. Councilmember Harris Dawson. Koretz.
Here.
Kerkorian.
Here.
Lee.
Present.
Martinez.
Present.
O'Farrell.
Present.
Price.
Present.
Rahman.
Here.
Ridley Thomas.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
14 members present and a quorum, Madam President.
First order of business.
Approval of the minutes of February 24th.
Mr. O'Farrell moves and Mr. Cedillo seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Koretz moves and Mr. Bonin seconds. Next.
Madam President, today is Tuesday and time for the flag salute.
Ms. Rahman, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Gladly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Ms. Rahman. Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and run through the agenda.
Madam President, would council like all items to go forthwith today?
Without objection, that will be the order. Next.
There has been a request to continue item 10 for 2 weeks to March 17th.
Without objection, that will be the order. Next.
Items 1 through 27 are items for which public hearings have been held. A Homelessness and Poverty Committee report for item 20 has been submitted and posted to council file number 18-0628. Items 28 through 52 are items for which public hearings have not been held. A motion is required for item 34, and it should be held on the desk. Items 53 through 59 are items scheduled for closed session. Public hearings have been held for items 53 through 58. A public hearing has not been held for item 59. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, without objections, those items are now before us. Members, do you wish to call any of these items special?
Yeah, Madam President, I'd like to pull file item number 20 for verbal amendments.
Number 20, go ahead.
I don't have those amendments right now in real time, but when we get to file item number 20, I will articulate the verbal technical amendments.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hold item number 20 on the desk for Mr. De Leon. Any other
Thank you.
items? Any other items, Mr. De Leon?
That'll be right there. Thank you.
Mr. Price?
Thank you, Madam President. I need to recuse myself from item 28 due to my wife's business, Dale Richardson and Associates, was a former client who is an applicant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's been a request for Mr. Price to recuse himself on item 28. Ms. Rahman?
I have an amendment to item number 27.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and read that into the record?
Yes, I'm going to summarize the amendment. Essentially, this amending motion directs HCID and researchers to collect and publish data about tenants and landlords who apply and receive funding for this round of the ERAS program. And the second directive is essentially for HCID to work with council offices and community groups to review the data and to think about complementary policies for rent relief and housing protections and report back in 60 days. And that amendment, I believe, should be circulating right now.
Yeah, and I believe you've also had Mr. Harris Dawson second that?
That's correct.
Mr. Harris Dawson, thank you. And that's being circulated. Thank you. Any others, Ms. Rahman?
Nope, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Madam President. Items 4 and 33, I'd like to call special for comments.
Okay, items 4 and 33 for Mr. O'Farrell for comments. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, what items are available for us to vote on?
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, council may vote on items 1 through 3, 6 through 9, 11 through 19, and 21 through 26.
Okay, please call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
15 ayes, these items are adopted.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's move on to public comment. I apologize. Let's go ahead and take up the closed session items. Items 53 through 59. Mr. Krikorian, would you like to speak on any of these items?
Madam President, we
Yes.
actually need to take public comment on 59. So if we can just do 53 through 58, please.
Okay, thank you for the correction. So items 53 through 58. Mr. Krikorian?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Budget and Finance has considered each of these matters. They are routine recommendations regarding settlement, and Budget and Finance recommends approval of the City Attorney's recommendations. Those actions can be taken in open session unless members have questions or concerns about any of these matters.
Members, are there any questions on any of these closed session items before we vote? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam President. And for the record, for item 53, in the case entitled City of Los Angeles versus Shalene Katangian et al., the recommendation is to reject the plaintiff's offer of settlement. For item 54, in the case entitled The Estate of Kenneth G. Anderson versus the City of Los Angeles, the recommendation is to settle the probate matter by allowing Ms. Rosemary Long to purchase the Ohio farm property for $100,000 from the estate of Kenneth G. Anderson and to waive all claims and possible causes of action against the estate. For item 55, in the case entitled Council on American Islamic Relations, California et al. Versus Los Angeles Mayor's Office of Public Safety et al., the recommendation is to expend up to $400,000 in settlement. For item 56, in the case entitled Richard Castillo versus the City of Los Angeles et al., the recommendation is to approve the City Attorney recommendations in settlement. For item 57, in the case entitled Jerome Boyd et al. Versus the City of Los Angeles et al., the recommendation is to reject the plaintiff's offer of settlement. And finally, for item 58, in the case entitled Gerson Yomar Rivera Arana et al. Versus Cesar Rodriguez et al., the recommendation is to expend up to $300,000 in settlement. Beginning the roll, Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
15 ayes, these items are adopted.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and move on to public comment.
As indicated on the agenda, members of the public wishing to offer public comment should call 669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-535-8466 and press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. Finally, when you hear the last 4 digits of your phone number, press star 6. And again, Members of the public wishing to offer public comment should call 669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-535-8466 and press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press star 9 to request to speak. And finally, when you hear the last 4 digits of your phone number, press star 6.
To members of the public calling in, when it's your turn to speak, please state which of the agenda items you'd like to speak on. You have 1 minute per item to speak, up to 3 minutes total, and 1 minute for general public comment if you wish. Please start with the items before general public comment. We'll tell you when your time's up. When speaking on the agenda items, you must be on topic. Our goal is to get through as many speakers as we can. If you're not speaking on topic, or if we can't tell whether you're speaking on an agenda item, you'll get one brief warning from me or the president. If you do not immediately get clearly on topic or again stray off topic, your time will be forfeited and we'll move on to the next speaker. We will take 40 minutes total of public comment. The items that are open for a public comment are items 5, 20, 27 through 52, and 59. To repeat, that's 5, 20, 27 through 52, and 59. Finally, for members of the public calling in to speak, when you hear someone address you, either by reading out the last 4 digits of your phone number or other identifying information if you're calling in with a block number, you're live in the council meeting and it's your turn. Please immediately press star 6 to unmute yourself and then tell us which items you want to speak on. We understand you may be listening on channel 35 or computer or other device. If you are, please keep one ear on the phone though. There's a brief time delay between the live meeting and the broadcast, and if you're only listening to the broadcast, you might not hear us announce you right away and press star 6 quickly, and we may think you're no longer on the line and you'll lose your turn. Also, if you're listening on another device, because of the time delay and because of feedback, please immediately turn down the volume on the other devices right away. Thank you very much, and we're ready to take public comment. Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Let's go ahead and take the first caller.
Caller ending in 5560, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, good morning. Fernando Rejon, item 34, and general comment.
You have a minute for each. Please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, council members. My name is Fernando Rejon. I'm the executive director of the Urban Peace Institute. We are members of the LA Intervention Coalition, which is composed of 16 frontline gang intervention agencies and groups committed to ending the gang homicide epidemic in Los Angeles. We're here today to advocate for the Fund Peacemakers campaign, seeking $54 million to strengthen community-based public safety efforts in the city. LA has been a national leader in non-traditional community safety efforts for over a decade, as the efforts of LA's peacemakers have been thoroughly evaluated. For example, a joint UCLA-USC study found that in South LA, when gang-related homicides are responded to by LAPD only, the chance of a retaliatory homicide is 26%. When LAPD plus gang intervention respond in their separate lanes, the chance of a homicide drops to below 1%. That is extremely significant. So despite the current surge we're experiencing in LA and nationally, gang intervention has helped keep the city safe for the last decade, helping to maintain a low rate of violence and death. But we can do more as we seek a Vision Zero plan for gang-related homicides in the city. During the pandemic, they maintained their primary role as violence interrupters and embraced the additional role as virus interrupters, handing out food, PPE, and credible public health information to address the 2 public health surges. Intervention workers in LA were the only ones in the nation to be classified not only as essential workers, but also emergency personnel per the health order. The LA Intervention Coalition is seeking substantial investment to broaden their role in community-based safety efforts. For example, going from 120 to 500 intervention worker positions and going from 40 to 250 peace ambassador positions, creating a minimum salary of $45,000 plus benefits and hero pay, and ensuring access to flexible dollars for innovative responses. We are in support of item 34, calling for approximately $3.5 million to be invested in community intervention workers, which we believe is a step in the right direction. We thank council members Harris Dawson, Curran Price, and Mark Ridley Thomas for their support. However, we call on the city to do more to live into the national demand to reimagine public safety. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 6068, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, yes, this is Richie Sergenko from the People's City Council. I'd like to speak on items 34,
and general public comment, please.
You have a minute for each. Please begin, sir.
Yes, for 34, we're hoping, calling in solidarity with People's Budget LA and Black Lives Matter LA, hoping that this 32 million of the remaining 88 million that is being defunded from LAPD and reallocated does pass. We're not opposing the council's override of the mayor's veto, but I think this is an important opportunity to note that when People's Budget LA, led by Black Lives Matter LA, was in city council chambers last year, they were presenting a specific issue of how the police treat Black Angelenos. And this money that is being diverted from LAPD should be directly invested into Black communities and Black-led organizations. So we think council, should go further from the 32 million that's already been reallocated. And there's a provision in this council budget item. Seemingly no one knows what it means or where it came from. But in the council file, provision 25, it says that if this passes, that council has to send their real allocation priorities to the CAO's office by March 5th. But literally no one knows what this provision means. So if this passes, does this mean that by March 5th, council offices have to say how they should allocate the 56 million remaining if this passes today? Fortunately, Black Lives Matter LA has provided a list for council to reference. It'll be posted later today about Black organizations that can be funded with this 56 million. These dollars were promised to go to Black communities.
Thank you, Speaker.
And Black-led organizations.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 8018, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like.
Sorry, my name is Brittany Nieto, and I would like to speak to agenda item 34 also.
You have a minute. Please begin.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today concerning Los Angeles investment in public health and safety. My name is Brittany Nieto, and I'm the program manager of community violence at Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. Giffords is a national organization dedicated to supporting laws, policies, and programs proven to save lives from gun violence. I'm calling today in support of Los Angeles Intervention Coalition and their campaign to invest $54 million to increase the number of violence intervention workers, providing the city with an effective community-based response to violent crime. Over the last decade, Los Angeles, through the development of the Mayor's Office of Gang Reduction and Youth Development, has made remarkable strides towards addressing shootings and homicides. However, cities across the country are facing remarkable challenges this year. COVID-19 has had a disproportionate impact on Black and Brown communities, exposing inequalities in our healthcare system and social safety net. In many cities, the pandemic is also deeply entwined with the nation's gun violence crisis, particularly as gun sales rise. Both public health crises have tragically amplified the other's harms. Last year, many cities experienced significant spikes in shootings and homicides, even as most other types of crimes declined. Nationally, this violence has helped drive what's expected to be the largest single-year increase in gun violence for which data is available. Despite LA's progress, the city is not immune from the trends. In 2020,
Speaker,
homicides increased 36%.
Speaker, do you want to take general public comment also?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Do you want a minute of general public comment to finish?
I would appreciate that. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Despite LA's progress, the city hasn't been immune to this trend, and in 2020, homicides increased 36%. And for the first time in over a decade, the city experienced more than 300 homicides. The need for community-based violence prevention and intervention has never been greater, but during the pandemic, organizations engaged in such work are stretched dangerously thin. As you may learn from Los Angeles Intervention Coalition members, intervention workers have been working around the clock to provide essential to people in need, PPE, and PPE to people in viral hotspots, many of whom reside in the same communities that are disproportionately impacted by gun violence. So I urge the council members to reaffirm their commitment to peacemakers at the front lines of our gun violence crisis and to the global pandemic by by approving agenda item 34. While additional resources are necessary to confront the unprecedented challenges facing the city, this would constitute an important first step toward providing violence intervention professionals the resources that they need to meet this crisis and achieve peace.
Thank you, Speaker.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 4400, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, hi, my name is Michael Kagan. I'd like to speak on general comment as well as item number 34.
You have a minute for each. Please begin.
Yeah, hi, I was just calling today in solidarity with the People's Budget, Black Lives Matter LA, supporting the council's override of the mayor's veto. City Council needs to allocate the remaining $56 million of money to prioritize the need of Black Angelinos. This is something that, to prioritize the needs of Black Angelinos. This is something that BLM is aiding in. They provided you guys a list of qualified organizations that they work with. Second Call, the Professional Community Intervention Training Institute, and the Reverence Project. $32 million is just a very small portion of the $150 million reallocated from the LAPD, but it has the potential to improve the lives of many, many Angelinos. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Caller ending in 7543, press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Hi, good morning. Good morning.
Yes.
I'd like to make a public comment on item 34 and general public comments, please.
You have a minute for each. Please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Fabo. I'm calling to encourage the City Council to override the mayor's veto because we need to allocate the funds to social services and community development programs and job training. Because one of the things that I've learned in my research on preventing homelessness is to provide jobs to people and affordable housing in order to make people not to avoid homelessness. And we need to use the funds to programs that are pro-social that will help the community and not just Los Angeles, but in San Fernando Valley as well, and impoverished low-income areas. We need to provide job training, community development, personal development, and education. And that concludes. So I encourage the City Council to vote yes on overriding the mayor's veto on 34. And we're moving on to general public comment. Mr.
Sure.
Pablo?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. And for my general public comment, I would like for the city to do more to reduce pollution, trash, because I've been volunteering with environmental groups locally. And what I've noticed, there's a lot of trash and that ends up in the oceans and microplastics that fish that, think it's food and ends up and being human consumption, and it's toxic. And we have to do more to reduce the trash within our community. We need to encourage people to recycle, to not litter, the freeways, streets, the parks. And we have to increase funding for community cleanup across the valley and Los Angeles in general. Thank you very much for accepting my comments.
Of course. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 7719, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yes, it's Eric Previn. I'd like to speak on 34, 46, 55, and the general public comment.
So 55 we voted on, but the other two are fine. So you have 2 minutes followed by 1 minute for general public comment. Please begin.
Okay, thanks. Well, this is a tough agenda because it's so big and there's a lot going on. And I know that we're trying to get the mayor's veto overturned, which I do support that actually. And speaking of mayoral vetoes, I'd like to ask also the mayor, in connection with 34, to not sign the Jane MBQ Doe case versus the city of Los Angeles that was to pay out almost $2 million to
So, Mr. Previn, you're perfectly free to talk about that in general public comment, but not as
No. This is related to mayor's veto. It's about vetoes, sir.
No, that's a different item. It's a different topic entirely, Mr. Previn. So please get back to the items you said you want to speak on, or move to general public comment.
Well, then I'll get back to the items that I want to speak on. I mean, I thought that item 44 is also a reasonable item to speak on because it's in my district. Here you have Krikorian conveniently and helpfully earmarking 58,000. But when you look at what it's for power washing and bulky move around. Now, that is not a great area, but we do have some needs. It's a question of how that money is distributed. And so I was concerned because it's faux earmarked for the Conservation Corps, but then it says in the fine print, or anybody else that Caro may choose, essentially. That's his chief of staff who likes to run for neighboring districts like Monica's district and then collect all sorts of contributions for favors in CD2. So a good area for those who are peeking into that. But I know that there is work to be done. It's just that it should be more transparent because none of us have heard a goddamn thing about this. And we're very focused on protecting the people in our community also. And I'm worried that there's too much aggression in the way that these, kind of sweeps, to use an old term, are conducted. So I'm hoping that it's done right, but we have no way of knowing.
And you can go on to your general.
The CPRA is the Public Record Act, and that's the one that says that you have to show records. You've been doing a bad job of that, and so we've asked for these records, and we've asked also for the records in connection with the lawsuit on the very end of your agenda. You're going to go in later on, called voluntary. What is it? It's so strange. It's like voluntarily disclosed taxpayer, a pending litigation dispute. Okay, well, but we need a little bit more information, and none has been provided. So now I'll go into my general public comment, which is just to simply say that the mayor should reject the Robert Kane predator educator at the LAPD lawsuit and have LAP Police Protective League in their ongoing negotiations, which are endless, realize that they are the only ones who can control that kind of behavior. So even though we're angry at the mayor and Krikorian, what can they do? If we don't, they can shut down these settlements in which the people pay. The 9,900 people.
Caller
Next
ending in
speaker.
8435, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 8435, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 1148, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
I'd like to speak on all available items, please, and general public comment also, please.
Sure, Speaker. So you have 3 minutes for items 5, 20, 27 through 52, 59, and then a minute for general. Please begin.
Did you say 20 also?
I did.
Okay, thank you. First, apologize to Ms. Autry for your disrespect, Martinez. On all items, all votes today will be yes votes, just like all other LA City Council votes. It's called vote trading, vote swaps. It's illegal. Why are they here? To campaign. It's just a big show. Item number, let's start with 38 through 38, 40, 39, 40, 41, 45, 48, 56, 51, and 52. They're spending $274 million. If you want to hide something, hide it in public sight. Public. $274 million for 710 units. All this money earmarked, including the $1.2 billion HHH fund, is just a fraud. All these units, the money can only be used for new construction. That cuts out, say, a garage conversion program. There's 250,000 garages in this city. You don't have to buy the land, the foundation, the walls, the seal, the roof, none of that. $60,000, $70,000. Many high percentage of the homeless can be put into that into that program. People would sign up, you'd get 100,000 homeowners overnight in a program like that. But here we are, you can only use the money for new construction. That means the developers, these people, these sleazy councils sitting here are murdering people. They get money from campaign contributions from the developers. They get campaign contributions from the consultants. They get campaign contributions from the union. And the city makes hundreds of millions of dollars on these fees, which half of that goes to the LAPD, of course, which makes campaign contributions again. These people have no incentive to end homelessness. They are awash in money. $274 million for measly 710 units. We cannot build our way out of this. We have to use the programs, the buildings that are already existing, but they won't do it. They have no incentive to do it because they're making so much money off the homeless. This is what's going on, people. Items 38, 39, 40, 41, 45, I mean, building these units for over $500,000 a pop. They are happy as a lark. They get to sit in their seats. They get to stay there, but the homeless die on the street every day.
And you can go on to your general public comment if you wish, Speaker.
Thank you, sir. The greatest problem in the black community are these Sambo, Uncle Tom, black elected officials, the ones sitting right there. Ridley, Uncle Thomas, Price, you heard him, his wife gets money, I mean, his wife's businesses. He benefits from evictions, relocation fees. The People's Motion 21-0001, no sitting councilman can hold office outside his current term if the city homelessness is not decreased by 25% in their current term. This is what we need to remove these people. And I'd like to adjourn in memory of the 3 to 8 homeless people that will die every day till the next council meeting. These people are pariahs. We need to change the system. All planning use must come out of the city council purview.
Thank you, Speaker.
Caller ending in 3325, press *6 to unmute yourself. Caller ending in 3325, press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello, yes, I'm calling for item 34.
You have a minute. Please begin, sir.
Okay, my name is Fernando Saravia, and I'm actually a resident of District 9. I've been in District 9 for 39 years, and I know that funds are always needed in this area. We are a poor community. We're actually trying to better the community. I'm one of the actual activists, and I work in the community as well. And I know that funds are needed for, to have programs, intervention and prevention with gangs and homelessness and all that stuff. So I really, really strongly believe that we need that money in District 9.
Thank you, Speaker.
There's a lot of things that need to be done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the city. The crime rate is big, and we need community programs and stuff like that to actually help.
Speaker, did you want a minute of general public comment, or are you done?
I just want to give thanks to Councilman Price for his leadership in our community.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Caller ending in 3561, press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hello, I'm Lorenzo Chapman, and I'd like to speak on item 34, general comment.
You have a minute for each. Please begin.
I'm in support of overriding the mayor's veto. The San Fernando Valley, especially Sun Valley, is in need of more programming and prevention intervention. This money needs to go to these Black and brown communities, which Sun Valley is. I've lived in these communities my whole life. So I know personally how bad we need funding in these areas because I was a youth in these communities. And now I serve the youth and in this community for the last 10 years. The positive impact the funding would have in the community would be hard to describe. Especially now that COVID has hit. We need programming and prevention intervention more than ever. And I just really appreciate having the time to speak on this because it's something that we see that we need drastically in the community. The young Black and brown kids in these communities are in dire need of it. And as you can see with COVID and them not having things available to them, it's affecting us in a negative way. So I just want to say, yeah, I'm definitely in support of overriding the mayor's veto and the need of the funding, prevention, and intervention in the community. Not only just, and I'm speaking from someone who lives in the community, not someone on the outside. And yeah, that's those are my comments.
Thank you, sir.
Caller ending in 7177, press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Good morning. I would like to speak on item 34 in general comment.
You have a minute for each. Please begin.
Good morning. My name is Donnie Gomez. I have been involved in gang intervention for around 20 years, worked in many council areas from the Northeast LA to the South LA, and currently have been doing gang intervention services for 6 years in District 9, 8, 10, and 1, covering from Southwest, Rampart, and Newton police divisions. I support the override of the mayor's veto and support the community reinvestment plan and Councilman Price's and Cedillo's proposals. CD1 and CD9 is among the poorest districts in all of Los Angeles and they lack the value of resources, especially our marginalized youth and families. Intervention has been marginalized, undervalued, underpaid. We are outnumbered. In CD1, there are 27 gangs and around 1,000 gang members, and I only have 5 staff to serve them. On CD9, we have around 47 gangs and 2,500 gang members and 10 staff to serve them. We are bleeding for resources, and the reality is that we're watching our youth bleed and die. The proposal to the Councilman Curran Price and Cedillo is one of the most progressive actions in our nation's history. CD1 and CD9 support community intervention workers, helping reduce violence in the neighborhood, homelessness, and their community-based initiative that address economic inequality and prevent poverty. Gang activity in our areas have spiked despite coronavirus. I have staff passed away because of the virus. I have staff critically sick because of the virus. But regardless of what they have not quit. They have not stopped working. They are there fearlessly. They continue to do the work just because they know they are needed and there'll be nobody else to do it. You know, they're stopping murders. They're stopping crime. We need additional community intervention workers, you know, to save and guide our youth. Please understand the importance and the need of supportive social programs to uplift the community and boost self-worth. We need homeless prevention programs, youth employment, reentry programs, create peace ambassadors to assist intervention workers. I just wanted to thank the Councilman Price and Councilman Cedillo for their leadership and vision, as well as their commitment to support individuals and families who need it the most. With the increase in shootings across the city, I urge all city council
to join. Thank you.
Caller ending in 7072, press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Yes, my name is Norma Chavez, and I'd like to speak on item 34.
Go ahead. You have a minute.
Thank you. I'm just here to show my full support to the reinvestment of funds to the impacted communities. I would really like to see more programs for prevention and intervention, as well as some investment in our parks. There's a particular one that comes to my mind right now. It's the Sheldon Skate Park in Sun Valley, and we really need a full-time employee there so they can take care of our park because it's full of graffiti right now and unwanted activity. So I see that there's no point on having a park if the public don't feel safe going there. So our community needs safer parks, free of graffiti and unwanted activity, and We need prevention and intervention programs. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you, Speaker.
Caller ending in 0475, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, my name is representing Black Lives Matter. I'd like to speak to item 34 in general public comment.
You have a minute for each. Please begin.
Sure. So we are calling in, and there are many, many of us on the line waiting to be called. We're calling in support of item 34. We must override the mayor's veto. We must get the money that was reallocated from LAPD into our communities. And we want to uplift the commitment and double down on the commitment that City Council has made in listening to Black Lives Matter and listening to people's budget and saying that dollars need to go to intervention work, dollars need to go into the hands of those who are struggling in communities, dollars need to go into housing, especially for Black people. And so while we're in strong support of item 34, we also want to say that this money was reallocated in the name of George Floyd, in the name of Breonna Taylor, in the name of Waukesha Wilson, in the name of Kenny Watkins. And so Black
General public
blood
comment.
has been spilled. This can be part of my general public comment. Black blood has been spilled. Black organizing work has been poured into this, and we need these dollars specifically to go to benefit Black Angelenos through Black-led organizations. And so the remaining allocation, we've sent a letter listing Black-led organizations. The remaining allocation, we are strongly encouraging City Council to be very deliberate and intentional and ethical and courageous in making sure that the dollars get to Black communities. Don't just say Black Lives Matter, make Black Lives Matter by voting yes on 34 and directing those resources into our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Caller ending in 4549, press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes, which items would you like to speak on?
I'd like to speak on items 34 and make a general public comment and ask not to be cut off prior to my time.
You have a minute for each.
Like I was before.
Please begin.
Hi, my name's Roxanne. I'm just a citizen for Los Angeles. I'd like to remind the council that this money was intended to help BIPOC Angelenos, that it came out of the veins of Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, and that the protests and the unrest since last year. It's not intended to be a city council district slush fund. It must be used to fund Black organizations that serve the community, such as Jail Support LA, Second Call, the Professional Community Intervention, the Reverence Project, Advocate for Peace and Urban Unity, Affiliates and Offenders Recovery Program, Community Reflections, Developing Options, Helper Foundation, and many more organizations that have been helping the actual community. I would like to move on to my general comment.
Yes, please.
I'd like to remind the council that they're standing in a moment in time where citizens are watching which side of history you choose to stand on. I'd like to remind the council that the George Floyd trials are coming up, and that we the people haven't forgot about the families like Andres Guardado, like the Cesar Rodriguez family, Fred Williams, or Dijons. And we will not stop until this budget reflects the people and not the gang of law enforcement you've allowed to terrorize us. I'd like to also urge the council to reopen the Grand Park in front of City Hall to allow grassroots organizers, and the Leimert Park to allow grassroots organizers to start organizing, and remind them that no amount of fences erected, tactics from LAPD, LASD, and attempts to silence us will not stop us from taking back our city from police units. And if you refuse to uphold the integrity with your position, we will continue to fight back in March. I'm sure Councilman Thomas can attest to this, to the fact that we have no problem showing up on your doorstep if you continue to fund gangs such as the Banditos, the Cavemen, the Executioners, the Little Red Devils, the Regulators, the Spartans, the Grim Reapers. The city has taken many attempts to stop people from protesting, and I'd like to remind you that we will continue to do so if you guys continue to misuse this budget. We see that you guys are proposing more money into LAPD as much as we're asking for you to remove.
Thank you, Speaker.
Speaker. Next speaker.
Caller ending in 4208, press star to unmute. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Hi, Rob Kwan. I'd like to speak on items 30, 34, and general public comment.
Sure, you have 2 minutes for the items and a minute for general public comment. Please begin.
So item 30 is related to our local emergency declaration, and I think it's worth noting that the last regularly scheduled Friday meeting this council held was on March 6th of last year, all despite the charter requiring that you meet 3 times a week. I also think it's worth continually noting that you need to step up, use your powers under this declaration, and commandeer the hotels, commandeer that St. Vincent Hospital, whatever you want to do with it, turn it into non-congregate shelter. For item 34, it's really disingenuous how this vote's being framed. We're seeing it turned around, and we need to override the mayor's veto. And the only reason anybody is okay with you overriding the mayor's veto is because you're now doing what the mayor told you to do. You're now doing what Councilmember Harris Dawson called progressive gobbledygook. So as you celebrate this vote today, it's great to see you getting in the right direction. But remember that, Councilmember Harris Dawson was calling this progressive gobbledygook, and clearly it was within reach because you were able to do it. It's been almost 2.5 months since the veto, and I think it's notable that Councilmember Martinez didn't bother to have a meeting to discuss this item before its overhaul. It's odd that the changes to this item didn't come from a motion, but a letter which has a majority of the Public Safety Committee signed on to it, maybe a Brown Act violation, I don't know. And I think it's also kind of suspect that details for the rest of the money are apparently going to be worked out by back channeling with council offices between now and Friday. That's not a participatory budget process. We're having comment limited to 40 minutes on this item. That boils down to $2.2 million for every minute you're allowing to be spoken of public comment at this whole meeting. And again, it's always just funny to see how FABL bends over backwards to offer more time to people who didn't ask for it. On top of that, apparently the clock doesn't apply to people calling in to flatter our council members. I want to make sure some other people get some time in to speak, so I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 3843, press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
Andrea Jimenez, general public comment.
You have a minute. Please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, City Council members. I will get personal. We are disappointed that we are forgotten by the city. I hope that by the end of June, or hopefully earlier, the city stops abusing people's property. Please pay attention to what I'm about to say. We're hoping that June is the end of the moratorium that keeps getting extended over and over again, and that we will be allowed to pay 3 grown-ass men who are in their mid-40s to move out of our house that we are trying to live in, that we own and have been paying mortgage on since last March without receiving a dime. These men are willing to move, but the amount of money they're asking highly exceeds what the city will have us pay them for relocation. These tenants are taking advantage of us, and they know it. Maybe by June, we can finally plan on living in this house and stop sleeping on a couch. The action we need is known as allowing no fault evictions in order to relocate these tenants. And to emphasize once again, my husband is using his military disability money to pay the mortgage and these bills for these.
Thank you, Speaker.
Next speaker.
Caller ending in 0313, press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes, which items would you like to speak on?
Hi, my name is Catherine Safely, and I'd like to speak on item number 34 in general comment, please.
And you have a minute for each. Please begin.
Thank you. I'm calling in solidarity with People's Budget LA and Black Lives Matter Los Angeles to support this item. I support the council's override of the mayor's veto. And at the same time, I want to remind this council that the money that is to be divested from LAPD and to be reinvested into impacted communities was specifically intended to help Black community members in our city. The decision to reinvest this money came as a direct result of the protests and actions conducted by Black Lives Matter and People's Budget LA. And the money should be used to fund Black organizations who are at the forefront of transformative prevention and intervention work that create genuine safety for our most vulnerable community members, our Black and Brown community members. This money should be invested in accord with the vision of those organizations who worked so hard and so long to make this reinvestment happen in the first place. Our Black community members are the most impacted by various disparities and forms of systemic harm and should be the ones on the receiving end of these funds. For my general comment, I want to urge the City Council to, I know this is ahead of tomorrow's budget, but to seize the hotels in Los Angeles to house our unhoused community members. Building new structures is a waste of money when we have so many empty structures that could be utilized for taking care of our unhoused community members. This is an incredibly urgent matter, especially in the midst of a pandemic when they're at particular risk of contracting COVID-19 in the conditions they're currently living in. I also urge the City Council to use your power to do whatever you can to stop the sweeps. Displacing houseless people at this time is incredibly dangerous, not only to them, but to our communities at large. It is incredibly negligible and reckless and inhumane to continue to displace our unhoused people and to allow law enforcement to steal their property and to...
Thank you.
Caller ending in 5245, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the items you'd like to speak on.
My name is Jones, and I want to speak on general public comment.
Go ahead, you have a minute.
I want to add my voice and the voice of the organizations that I belong to and head to the recall of Marquise Harris Dawson. We finally got rid of the guy that one caller always refers to as the king of homelessness, Herb Wesson. And it appears Jackie Lacey is gone also. Now we're going to cleanse the Black community of Marquise Harris Dawson, the gentrifier in chief. Dawson is trying to evict the poor residents of a rent-controlled unit, Dorset Village, with 206 apartment buildings at Slauson and Crenshaw, so that his billionaire buddy, Jeff Green, can build a luxury apartment. We will not tolerate this barbaric act. We, the people, are sick and tired of Black people that are elected, like Marquise Harris Dawson, flipping and selling out our Black community for his own personal gain. We must recall Marquise Harris Dawson now.
Thank you, Speaker.
Caller ending in caller ending in 6140, press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Hello. Hello.
Yes,
Please.
what items would you like to speak on?
Item 34, please.
You have a minute. Please go ahead.
Thanks. My name is Leslie Johnson. I'm calling from Community Coalition to give our support of the override of the mayor's veto. After much delay, we're cautiously pleased and support the investments slated to reimagine public safety, particularly the allocations towards alternative traffic enforcement study and the unarmed response to homelessness and nonviolent calls. These two efforts are vital in bringing an end to pretextual stops and other contact with law enforcement that lead to the abuse, harassment, and murder of Black and Brown people. Are also encouraged by the appropriation to community intervention workers. The full funding and support of these individuals is the response desired by community in the face of increased violence and crime brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, not the irresponsible and dishonest deployment of LAPD officers engaging in investigative stops, which are dangerously reminiscent of racist and ineffective pretextual stops. We're also encouraged by the presentation of innovative solutions, including Councilman Price's Guaranteed Basic Income pilot program to benefit single parents. Finally, we stand in solidarity with BLM's call for remaining funds to be designated to Black-led organizations such as Black Worker Center, Second Call, Advocates for Peace and Urban Unity, Affiliates and Offenders Recovery, Community Reflections, and Los Angeles Community Action Network. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker.
Okay, members, that concludes public comment. Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and vote on the following items. Item number 5, items 29 through 32, and items 35 through 52. Please call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon. Councilmember De Leon. Harris Dawson.
What was it? What happened? The vote?
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
And once more to Councilmember De Leon.
Aye.
15 ayes, these items are adopted.
Okay. Madam Clerk, let's move on to item 15-9, which was a closed session item.
Thank you, Madam President. And for item 59, in the case regarding a pending litigation dispute, voluntarily disclosed taxpayer, the recommendation is to settle in favor of the city in the amount of $974,000 and $440. Again, $974,440.
Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the roll on item 59.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Harris Dawson. Councilmember Harris Dawson. Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
14 ayes, this item is adopted.
Okay, let's move on to item 28. Mr. Price has requested to recuse himself on this item. Can we please remove him from the board? Okay, Mr. Price has been removed, so Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Harris Dawson. Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price recused. Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
12 ayes, this item is adopted.
Okay, members, let's move on to item 34. Okay, let's move on to item 34. Members, last summer, Angelinos flooded into the streets demanding that this council reimagine what public safety looks like in our city. They asked for us to look at public safety as more than just a policing issue. This council took a bold step and made commitments to reinvest $150 million. And thanks to the efforts of Councilmember Krikorian and Price, we allocated $50 million to save city jobs, positions that mostly were held by Black and brown employees, and $100 million for youth jobs and kids in communities of color. The remaining $88 million will be dedicated to reimagining public safety, preventing poverty, and addressing racial disparities and homelessness. For those of us who come from these neighborhoods, we know all too well that our part of town have been historically neglected, and that this is an opportunity to invest those funds back into these communities. But we all know, and we have to be honest with each other, things are not often as easy. Even when it comes to reimagining and reinvesting in communities of color, somehow it always turns into a fight. And when it comes time to providing funding and services and assistance to low-income communities, there is always something or a reason as to why we can't do it. Or somebody always has a better answer as to what communities themselves are telling us. If we're going to address the systemic racism that lies in our society, and if we're going to address the fact that the children of color are placed yards behind the starting line, it starts with reinvesting in communities that they come from. The neighborhoods I represent want for their kids the same things that other parts of the city have: resources, safety, security, because those are the things that actually give someone opportunity. By improving the quality of life in these neighborhoods, we can create a better, more equitable, and safer city for everyone. If we want systemic change, we need to look at our budget, our programs, and our policies through the lens of equity. Contrary to what some might believe, we are meeting the moment. Our plan lays out a down payment and a clear intention to make the needs of our communities. With every budgetary decision, we have to prioritize vulnerable and disadvantaged families and neighborhoods. We have to continue the work that we started this past summer. While this $88 million will not undo decades, if not centuries of neglect, the commitment we're making today is only the beginning. And I ask you to join me in that commitment. And with that, I would like to move to override the mayor's veto and to adopt 34B, communication from the CLA in the CEO's office.
Second.
Can I get a second? Thank you, Mr. Harris-Dawson. Mr. Riley Thomas?
Thank you very much, Madam President, members of the council. I begin by saying there's been ample opportunity for reflection over the past year. Now is the time to not just reimagine, but to reinvest in the Los Angeles, not just for the moment that we're in, but for the Los Angeles that we wish to see well into the future. Madam President, there's no challenge the city faces that illustrates the deep inequities that plague our system and our very lives more than that of the homeless crisis. Might I remind us all that 70% of those on the streets of Los Angeles are people of color, disproportionately Black. We want to speak the language of racial reckoning. We must start right there. And undoubtedly, that is why during the literal groundswell of calls for racial equity, a survey of some 24,000 Angelenos conducted by Black Lives Matter Los Angeles in collaboration with various community organizations articulated that housing security was their top concern. Reimagining the Los Angeles that's responsive to this call for greater equity, in my mind, means first and foremost, we have to begin in earnest the process of investing in a framework that prioritizes ending homelessness. Madam President and colleagues, doing so will undoubtedly impact the pipeline of people of color into our jails and our prisons, institutions that are now filled with Angelenos with mental illnesses who have no home to which they can return. To address this broken system, I believe we must systematically address poverty in its most basic form. I wish to say that homelessness is the most vile contemporary manifestation of poverty that I can possibly imagine. And I want to applaud you, Madam President, and balance of the members of the council who have begun to concretely articulate how to move this agenda forward. It means what? It means investing in an unarmed response system. It means what it means, underwriting, multidisciplinary outreach teams, and hard work of helping the residents of an encampment become residents of their own homes. It means investing in legal services for eviction defense. In other words, colleagues, it means reimagining in a real sense. Reimagining LA means operationalizing the hard work of building a legal obligation that requires government to act to help our residents up when they are down and to prevent them from falling down in the first place. That's the role of government. Proactive, broadly defined, fully robust. That's what we are called upon to do. So bit by bit, we ought to expand the parameters of democracy. And for me, that means that these investments are an illustration of what a right to housing can and should be. It's fundamental. It's not new. So we have work to do, and a lot of it, colleagues. That work is to meaningfully address these systemic inequities, these structural equities, these institutionalized inequities. This investment, I think properly considered, if anyone were to ask me what it is, I'd say it's a down payment. A down payment on what? It's a down payment on racial reckoning. Down payment on what? It's a down payment on a much better, a much brighter future for Los Angeles, all that we aspire to be. I'm pleased, Madam President, to be a seconder on this motion. I fully intend to vote affirmatively because Dr. King would once say it's always the right time to do the right thing. Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Riley Thomas. Mr. Price?
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, thank you for your leadership in this matter. You have been strong and steady throughout the course of our deliberations. Colleagues, so much has happened to bring us to this point today. Last summer, I marched with many of you and tens of thousands of demonstrators calling for an end to police brutality and racial justice in the name of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and countless Black and brown Americans who died at the hands of the police. On council, following demands to reduce funding to the police department and increase community investment, we supported diverting tens of millions of public safety dollars to council districts based on a needs assessment. Council 9 was expected to receive more than $21 million. So this is personal for me. We have the opportunity to move forward and allocate much needed funding to projects that will change lives. Today's families are struggling financially, mentally, and emotionally. Our communities are clamoring for alternative policing strategies that don't involve guns. Our city is being challenged with seeking solutions to repair generations of damage caused by the long-standing effects of inequality, racial, and social injustices. Societal ills that have led to homelessness, poverty, and the pain felt among neighbors. Members, our feet have been put to the fire, and it's time to deliver. Put aside any reservations, and let's do what's right for Angelenos. The moment requires real investments in the lives of real people. We must funnel more resources into disenfranchised communities if we're able to create the kind of tangible change we commonly speak about. It's time to stand up for our most vulnerable Angelenos and put their needs ahead once and for all. This community reinvestment plan is just the start, but this is a much needed lifeline to our low-income communities, who are at the just barely surviving. Part of my vision for the 9th District includes a $6 million guaranteed basic income pilot program, arguably the largest of its kind in the country. The CD9 guaranteed basic income pilot would give single-parent households stability to get through these extraordinary times. This program would provide a $1,000 a month stipend for an entire year. This is the difference between paying rent or buying groceries. Other programs my office will be pursuing for the district include an unarmed crisis response team, community intervention workers focused on reducing violence in neighborhoods, as well as safe passages, a program where community members are hired to monitor and create safe school and park environments. And homelessness prevention and other community-based initiatives that will address economic inequality and poverty. My vision for the 9th is centered around addressing inequities and healing and righting societal wrongs. These are the initial steps that we need to reimagine public safety, combat homelessness, and tackle the root causes of poverty. And it's exactly what the reallocation of public safety funds was meant to accomplish. This is answering the call of people and giving voice to the voiceless and taking a stand against intolerance in the name of civility. Let's not delay this any further. Let's take the vote today to move forward and get this money out into the community. I urge an aye vote. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members who participated in this very, very long, what feels like a long process. And I want to take the opportunity to applaud everybody who hit the streets this summer and everybody who's been a part of the fight for racial justice long before we saw that ghastly film of George Floyd being killed live on American television. The marches that we had in this summer were among the best focused and most peaceful set of actions we've had to protest the kind of police violence that we saw on television. I was proud to walk with Councilmember O'Farrell down the street, down Hollywood Boulevard, from Highland all the way into West Hollywood, and be there with tens of thousands of Angelenos of various stripes, pushing forward a contention that our society does not pay enough attention to the value of Black lives, and forcing the issue around Black lives mattering. And here in the city of Los Angeles, I thought we took what was a bold and a good first step, and that was to say, we hear you, Los Angeles, we're going to make a reinvestment. We heard you in the streets. We heard you with a survey of over 24,000 of Los Angeles residents. We heard you in the community meetings that the previous council president and our current council president held both in person and on Zoom during the summer. We've heard communities that have been crying out for decades and decades and decades that our investments are too weighted towards punishing people and not weighted enough towards investing in people and preventing situations where you want to consider punishment. Previous members have laid out the investments that they are putting forward. I think those are good. The ones that some of the ones we're putting forward in Council District 8 are in the public record at this time, and you can see what those are. But about those, I would say this. Of the resources that we're spending, 30 of the $32 million that we have proposals in front of you for go to organizations led by African Americans or Latinos. All of them serve people in the Black and brown community. So I want to thank folks who called in and pressed us on that issue. I think there's more that can be done, and I want to work with members to do more in the future. Here's the alarm I want to signal, though. The legacy of this country and the legacy that we were all born into says, when you get ready to make this type of investment or reinvestment, you come up with a reason not to. This goes all the way back to the Civil War. At the end of the Civil War, which was a war at least partly fought over this question of race. After an actual war where hundreds of people, thousands of people died, government says, okay, to make up for these dozens and dozens and generations of years of slavery, we're going to give people that have been former slaves 40 acres, and we're going to lend them a mule to work the land. The land was going to be on the coast of Georgia, the coast of South Carolina. Very quickly, there was a new election, there was a budget crisis, and guess what happened? That land got taken back from the former slaves and given to Confederate soldiers who could show that they suffered losses fighting the United States. And it goes on and on and on. More recently, in some of our lifetimes, the civil rights movement, we came up with a remedy called affirmative action that got implemented in the early 1970s. It doesn't go live until the mid 1970s. 20 years later, after 400 years of blocking Black people later, 20 years later, we take away affirmative action. And right now we have, if you look at our numbers in contracting and our numbers in a whole host of other areas, you can see the effect of that work. And so the take back is proposed and most often successful every time anything like this happens. And I know that there are folks who are challenging the process that we went through, the formulas that we used. And listen, I don't think any of this is beyond improvement. All of it can be improved upon. What I say to those who want to improve upon it, let's do that next year. Because we've got to make this, and we've got to make, after we do a down payment, we've got to continue to make a payment on this. Because all of us were born into this. There's not a one of us that can say that we weren't. Some of us benefited from it. Some of us pay the price for it. But it's on all of us to fix it. It's the only way that it gets fixed. And I think the citizens of our city showed us what it takes. White, Asian, Black, brown, everybody hit the streets this summer and demanded that we do better. I think this is just the beginning. I ask for your aye vote on all items.
Thank you, Mr. Harris Dawson. Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to echo all of the remarks that have been made so far. And thank you for your leadership on this very important issue. And Mr. Harris Dawson, thank you for talking about the psychology of bringing real change, how so often throughout our history in this country, we've been on the precipice of making great advancements for the overall health and well-being of everyone. And we've pulled back right when we needed to lunge forward. Let's not pull back, let's lunge forward. This vote today is part of the same overall initiative to take a deliberate, fresh look at making public safety and protecting and serving work better and more effectively for everyone, not leaving anyone behind. I also want to thank the countless individuals, community members, and organizations that marched, biked, and organized last summer, demanding change. The marches were a demand that leaders take decisive action to mitigate the structural deficiencies in modern day policing. And as you said, Mr. Harris Dawson, all of these structural deficiencies we've inherited. We know about them. We don't have all the answers, but we can certainly lean hard to change them. These are structural and cultural deficiencies that do not take into account the generational perceptions that many in our communities, especially communities of color, live with daily. This will take a long-term, relentless approach to bring that change. I have signed up to bring that change along with my colleagues. All of you will work relentlessly to reach that goal. And it will take this year and next year and the following year. But if we do this deliberately, thoughtfully, and with urgency, we will bring that change. And this is a very significant first step. Today's historic action would not be possible without everyone working together, even arguing, to make Los Angeles a better place for all of our residents. I particularly want to highlight the incredible work of two of the organizations that will benefit from this decision. One is the Visionary Youth Center, centered in East Hollywood, in a community that has been in great distress for decades. Visionary Youth Center has a mission to uplift youth from the negative impacts of trauma and violence and exposure by establishing a holistic youth center focused on creating generational change, fostering resiliency, and empowering youth to build flourishing communities. The Visionary Youth Center, in their mission statement, believes that violence-related trauma is defined as any relationship, process, or condition by which an individual or a group violates the physical, social, and or psychological integrity of another person or group. From this perspective, violence inhibits human growth, negates inherent potential, limits productive living, and ultimately causes death. They're an incredible organization, and they are going to benefit many, many others that would be an incredible risk because of our decision today. Another one I'd like to highlight is Brizzy Foundation. They were founded in 1982, Westlake, East Hollywood area. They were created by community leaders to address systemic disadvantages faced by local residents. Brizzy has grown from a grassroots drop-in tutoring program to keep local youth off the streets after school to a robust organization offering a holistic approach to uplift Central Los Angeles residents to achieve not only immediate socioeconomic stability, but long-term prosperity. Today, Brizzy's mission is to battle poverty by empowering youth and families in Los Angeles with the skills, resources, and relationships necessary to thrive. To pursue their mission, Brizzy offers diverse services under 3 program divisions: youth services, family services, and gang prevention. Colleagues, what we're doing today will help not just these 2 organizations, but countless others in this generation and future generations that we will never even know about. So let's lean forward, let's take this leap, and let's keep marching in an informed and worthwhile direction. And I think this is the right way to go. So colleagues, I ask for your aye vote. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Mr. Blumenfield, I see you came off and on the queue,
Sure.
so I just want to make sure you're off now, but you were on 2 times before. So do you want to speak
Sure.
to this?
Thank you. Madam Speaker, colleagues, while I have great respect for the movers of this motion, and I appreciate what folks are trying to do, and I think most of the funding that we're talking about is going to really important purposes that I fully support. I voted no when this motion first came before us. I agreed with the callers that said it wasn't true to the intent of the funding and it didn't go far enough. And I was glad the mayor vetoed it. And while the new version is much, much better than the first, I still rise in opposition and do not support overturning the mayor's veto. And there's 4 reasons. Number 1, we shouldn't spend money that we don't have. It's not financially responsible. There's not this chunk of money that's sitting in an account somewhere. We're literally borrowing money right now for basic operations. All of the proposed new spending, as great as it is, simply goes on the city's credit card and requires us to borrow more money to pay for it. That's not responsible or smart. We made deep cuts to core city services, all over this city, including paving our streets. We've broken our promises to city employees and forced them to take days off without pay. We're using MICLA funds that were supposed to be used to buy replacement equipment for basic operations. We've drawn down our reserve fund to the minimum. And I love many of these new expenditures, but how can we look at our employees and our constituents, look them in the eye and tell them to accept all of these sacrifices and then spend wildly on a host of new council-directed projects, as good as they are? Borrowing money like this prevents us from being able to provide critical programming in the future. In a few weeks, if we get the federal money, different story. We may be in a completely different place. Reason number 2 is the process. The process for spending this money, especially the proposed changes, is opaque and it's inappropriate. If the city family were like a regular family, it would be like the family that was struggling to make ends meet, pay for groceries and basics because they just lost a big part of their income, had a family meeting to talk about the belt tightening, only to find out that a few members took the family credit card and went on a spending spree. Even if they spent money on fixing the gutters or doing other critical things that benefit the whole family, they were irresponsible to blow their grocery budget on these things. Look, I think many of the things that are being proposed, these new expenditures are great. I think the revised list of expenditures is, as I said, better than the original, much better. I love the additional spending on UPI, love the money going to nonprofits like the Great 818ers, love investing in disinvested communities. But the process for making these expenditures is all wrong. Where did all of these proposed spending changes come from? It was outside of the budget process. It was outside of any public process. It's not the way we normally decide to spend tens of millions of dollars that were placed in the UB, especially when we're deficit spending. Normally, these big changes get vetted by the CAO. They're subject to public scrutiny. They go through the budget committee. We didn't sit around the horseshoe to discuss priorities. This is pretty much a take it or leave it proposal that 6 members put forward on a letter. That's not the way to do business. And worse, many of the items are new programs. And let's be honest, when we create a new program, it rarely goes away. Therefore, it's not just about spending in the last 4 months of the fiscal year. This spending creates a whole new set of budget priorities, many of which I agree with. But this isn't the right way to set those priorities. In this spending, where individual council members have to prioritize millions of dollars that'll be spent in their district over the course of the next 3 days, that's not a deliberative process. We're less than 2 months away from the council starting our regular budget process. Wouldn't that be a more appropriate way to decide how to do our spending priorities? Reason number 3, if we're going to spend a lot of this money that we don't have, ideally we do something bigger that reflects the goal of public safety alternatives, even more so than the pilot projects in different districts. There's some money in here for alternative interventions and gang interventionists, but it's not enough to make the kind of serious impact that the people have been calling for. If we're serious about diverting 911 calls to interventionists, then we should focus the lion's share of the money and go large. I was a co-author of the interventionist motion. I remain very bullish on this approach. I've held town halls with Cahoots members. I'd like to see us go big. Reason number 4, it's the political jurisdiction allocation. I think that is a recipe for disaster. It's one thing to evenly divide certain funds by 15 or geographically for those reasons, or to allocate mitigation money, but it's another to divide core services this way. It's not equal and it's not equitable. And I'm for an equity lens. I'm not advocating for equality over equity. I'm all for programs that spend more money on disadvantaged communities, and I'm all for spending money targeted to address racial disparities. And I would expect that historically underserved districts would receive the lion's share of these dollars. However, the funds are not allocated to people in poverty or people suffering from discrimination. They're targeted to political jurisdictions that are going to change in the next year with redistricting. It makes sense that needs-based programs will end up benefiting more people in political jurisdictions where there's more need. I get that. I don't expect things to be divided equally, but the problem with political jurisdiction funding is that we're not treating similarly situated people equally. They're being treated differently based on political boundaries. Someone who's hungry or poor in Canoga Park is just as hungry or poor as someone who lives in a different political jurisdiction. Someone in Canoga Park who's impoverished deserves universal income just as much as someone anywhere else in the city. It doesn't make sense that benefits can literally depend on which side of the street that you live on. I'm concerned this kind of political jurisdiction balkanizes our city when we should be uniting. We should all care about the problems of the entire city and should all have a collective say in its solutions. Yes, we give deference to council districts when they're local impacts, but I think this goes to an unhealthy extreme. One council member shouldn't have such direct control over services and grants, not to mention sole source contracts at this scale. If nothing else, it creates a problematic perception. For all these reasons, these four main reasons, I'm reluctantly voting no on overriding the veto. And I say reluctantly because I do very much support the thrust of what we're trying to do and what I know is at the heart of the folks who are pushing this forward, and I totally agree with, which is the idea of investing in communities that have suffered from disinvestment over the years and have suffered from discrimination. I just think that this is the way, the process and the reasons I outlined are not the way to do it. Thank you.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Blumenfield, for, I think, very well articulating the struggle that is part of this conversation right now. As one of the original movers of the effort to reallocate $150 million of LAPD's budget to programs that would help create systemic change in deployment of policing strategies that would reflect a shift from what we currently do. It gives me great consternation that we're here having a conversation based around a formula that was identifying communities based on census tracts and yet allocating these resources by council district. Because to me, it works against what is systemically problematic in communities like mine that have historically been disenfranchised, that are no different than many of these other neighborhoods. And the resources are getting diluted by, again, creating a formula that was based on a census tract map, or on census tracts, but then allocating those resources to be distributed throughout the council district. It doesn't align in that way. And that's what's problematic. And to your point, frankly, off the top, we could immediately provide alternative policing models that would immediately provide relief to those suffering with mental health, that wouldn't require the police department to respond to these calls. And yet we haven't immediately funded that. We stand to get a $30 million return on investment for a $2 million investment into this alternative method, but we haven't done that either. And so it's problematic for me that we're in this situation right now, because I wholeheartedly embrace the systemic change that will help honor all the communities of color that are in alignment and struggling right now. We have to reinvest in these disenfranchised communities. But I don't want this to be a one-time infusion of funds, because we've seen historically the investments that were infused after the Watts riots, and then they dissipated, and after the LA riots. Tomorrow marks the 30th anniversary of when Rodney King was beat in my district. The reinfusion of dollars that have come have never been sustained because we don't systemically change anything. And while these initial investments are very well warranted, what's most concerning for me is that we've sole sourced opportunities to certain organizations without systemically changing anything to help sustain it. And that is my biggest concern about the opportunities that we have to do something bigger and bolder in this city right now. We see it on the streets every day. The homelessness crisis has resulted from decades of underinvestment and lack of systemic support to communities of color. It's why we see disproportionately Black and Latino communities on the streets of Los Angeles. And we need to have a severe paradigm shift that leads systemic change, not just in the manner of how we do policing, but how we invest in these communities. And it requires greater reinvestment through youth development. When we see 32% of young people between the ages of 10 to 25 being arrested, we have a call to action, but we have a call to action to do it systemically, not by council district. And so what's most problematic for me is that we have not engaged in a manner or conversation that allocates these resources in a way that would avail it to all of Los Angeles. We need to reinvest these dollars in these communities, and we need to immediately infuse resources into these disenfranchised communities. But my concern is that we further disenfranchise those same very neighborhoods because they're living amongst communities that have more affluence. And so they're not being recognized based in this formula. And so those are some of the concerns that I have with not just where we are in this moment, because again, as one of the original movers of this effort, I would have preferred to see greater systemic changes associated with the work that we're talking about here today, so that we can ensure accountability for these dollars, so that we can ensure that it would then be transitioned into more systemic and real change that will change the trajectory for these very same communities that we're seeking to uplift. And so it's with great consternation that I would prefer for us to start moving in a manner that allows us to leverage what investment that we're putting forward in a way that will avail additional resources to be infused into our city so that we can sustain this going forward. And so I too am uncomfortable with the formula and moving forward as presented. As much as I love so many of these initiatives, I think it does a disservice to all communities of color, particularly those when I see my district with a 15% living below the poverty line. We have to be bold and lead systemic change. And it's not by one council district at a time.
Mr. Bonin?
Thank you, Madam President, and thanks everybody for the comments. There have been some exceptional points made by folks of different perspectives on this, and I really appreciate it. You know, when this item, the reallocation of the funds, was in Budget and Finance Committee last year, I joined Mr. Price and I fought hard for this reallocation of funds. I fought for it not to be reduced, and I fought for us to do it because reinvesting and reimagining public safety was the right thing to do then, and it's the right thing to do now. Spending our money in a way that addresses and finally starts to undo generations of inequity was the right thing to do then, and it's the right thing to do now. I get that sometimes that means my district isn't going to get the lion's share of the resources, and it's going to go elsewhere. And I've consistently held that view. It's why in years when Vision Zero was our hot topic, I fought really hard for Vision Zero, even when it wasn't going to spend any money in my part of town, because the money was going to be spent in communities that had suffered from disinvestment. It's why I joined Mr. Harris Dawson and I fought for the social equity provisions of the cannabis program and not to divide by 15. I believe in that very strongly. And I believe in the reallocation of these funds in ways that address inequity and disinvestment and structural racism. But like Mr. Blumenfield and Ms. Rodriguez, I have questions, I have concerns, and I have worries about the scale and the structure and the scope of what's before us today. I echo and applaud Ms. Rodriguez's comments about the fact that this does not do enough to make systemic change. There are so many things in here that I love. I mean, there are things in here that are amazing. I just don't understand why they stop at the council district line. why we have reentry programs on one side of Vermont and UBI on the other side of Vermont. I'd like to see them on both sides of Vermont. I'd like to see us in this package to have the mental health response with these vans that we've been waiting for. I would like us to be able to have, systemic change through the Youth Development Department that Ms. Rodriguez talks about. I just don't get the council district boundaries. And there's a couple reasons why that concerns me, several. I reluctantly voted for the formula in December, although that wasn't council district boundaries either. That was census tracts. And this ain't census tracts we're talking about. I had enough of concern with census tracts. I'm far more concerned with the council district boundaries. One, because there's so much up in the air. I'm not clear from what's before us today if GRID is going to be managing or if council offices are going to be managing UPI. I'm concerned about having such open-ended stuff that says nonprofit partners to be determined by council offices, particularly at a time when the spotlight is on corruption in this building. It really, really does not look good for this body to be making determinations that sound like that. And just structurally, the Child Savings Account, a great program, a citywide program, and we say in here that the priority will be as directed by a council office. I don't get or support that a single council office would direct and manage a citywide program. That concerns me quite a bit. But let me get to the core of my concern. And let me just sort of acknowledge the elephant in the living room, because there are times I know when people look at the map of council districts and tend to think that the entirety of my district is the priceless antiquities room of the Getty Museum. And that fails to recognize the diversity of my district and of every district, that there are people of color who are living in my district, that there are people who have faced inequity and systemic racism and who suffer from a lack of economic opportunity in my district. And I support every program that's in this. I just don't support the way it's designed, because money is allocated, programs are designed, benefits are rewarded, and eligibility is determined based on council district. And I know that's a tempting way to do it, and it's easy for sure. It's easy to cobble votes together that way, but here's what it does. It says to African Americans and to Latinos who don't live in CD 6, 8, 9, 10, 13, and 14 that you're being left out. And as I'm said, I'm fine knowing that the bulk of the money is going to other parts of the city, but it should be by objective qualifying criteria and not by council district. Doing it this way says to African Americans in Venice who have endured gentrification and displacement, who have the same stories of being stopped for driving while black as people in other council districts, who still face the same barriers to reentry, who still face the same job discrimination, that the city is turning its back on them because of which neighborhood they live in. It effectively tells them that when the real estate speculators have been banging on their doors trying to get them to sell and leave, they would have been better off saying yes. And that concerns me. It says to the Latino families in Del Rey and West LA in my district, many of whom are immigrants who are struggling to pay the rent, whose kids have been stuck at home with crappy internet connection for the past year, who don't have sufficient park place to play in, or who've been laid off from their hotel jobs, or who work in service jobs and are continuing to go to work, unvaccinated, at the risk of bringing illness to themselves and bringing it home to their families because they're called essential workers, but they're not paid that way. It says to them that LA is taking big steps to address inequity, but they don't qualify because of the council district they live in. And it says to the residents of public housing in Del Rey, Mar Vista Gardens, that families who come from all over Los Angeles, families who come from Watts, families who come from the San Fernando Valley, that they don't qualify for reentry programs or job programs or UBI or youth development or gang intervention, unlike the neighbors they grew up with or unlike their cousins,
because the housing that HACLA moved them into happens to be on the same side of the 405 as rich white people. And, you know, it says to grandmoms and moms in East Westchester or Ladera or really anywhere that they still need to be afraid to call for help when a family member is in mental health distress, because they won't be getting the unarmed response they need. Basically, it says to people of color in more than half of the city, more than half of the council districts, that this effort the city is making doesn't apply to them, and that they shouldn't be living where they're living. Basically, it says that Black Lives Matter in some parts of the city, but not in all parts. And Black lives must matter everywhere, not just in certain council districts. Now, I know we've heard people I respect and deeply admire saying, you know, people always say there's a reason not to do this. I'm not saying don't do this. I'm saying we should not do this in a way that leaves people behind, particularly based on who their council representative is or where the lines are drawn. There might be fewer low-income people or people who are Black or Indigenous or people of color in my district, but I'm as determined to fight for them as you all are for the people you represent. And voting for this wouldn't just be abdicating my responsibility to those people, to the people of color in CD11, but it would be betraying them. And I need to do better. So I can't support this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Mr. Ridley Thomas?
Thank you very much, Madam President. There's no collective shortage of experience on this council. The persons here, full third of the members of this council and some change who have served the legislature as well as on the city council, and for that matter on other bodies. And it is something that most of us have learned very, very early on and obviously needing to be reminded of. The legislative process. The perfect is the enemy of the good. Seems to me that it would be appreciated that we are not in this effort offering counsel of perfection. We are essentially trying to advocate, facilitate, and implement progress. There are those who make the claim. The first person who spoke in opposition to the motion invoked the fact that they would side with the mayor, Madam President, colleagues, in terms of his veto. I'm in receipt of a letter from the mayor addressed to the entire body, dated March 2nd. It reads as follows. Honorable members, thank you for the thoughtful response and the revised spending plan that captures some of our highest ideals and aspirations. I am pleased. This is the mayor of the city of Los Angeles who offers these insights. I am pleased to see an equity formula applied to smart investments in communities that have suffered the worst injustice and inequality throughout our city's history. Madam President, colleagues, that's the first paragraph. It goes well beyond that to delineate those things that share our common values. And the last sentence of the last paragraph in the letter to the council is as follows. I appreciate the steps you're taking in that direction, and I look forward to us taking many more together in weeks, months, in years to come. I simply offer that as a way of saying that one might position oneself as being more fiscally prudent and imply that any other activity is far less than that. But ultimately, the person who is being offered up as advancing a critique of the work that we're doing by virtue of a veto has essentially acknowledged the wisdom of the very action we wish to take, which is to try as best as we can, as responsibly as we can, to borrow his language, as thoughtfully as we can, to fill promises, commitments to the people of Los Angeles, not one district, several districts, citywide, not perfection, but progress. That's essentially what I think we are attempting to do. It seems to me that we are completely justified, wholly defensible in our pursuit here to advance this effort and to keep working to make it even better as we go forward. Madam President.
Ms. Robin?
Thank you. I thank you to all my colleagues who've spoken today about the allocations that they've proposed in this new round and some of the critiques that people have raised about how council dollars have been allocated, the process through which the projects were selected. And I think we can certainly have legitimate critiques about this process and about some of the real kind of frustrations about people living on either side of a council district and not being able to be eligible for these dollars in the same way. But I think, to me, the role of this body is to learn from our shortcomings and to do better next time. That doesn't indicate that we don't spend this money now. I, for one, am really impatient for these funds to be spent for the benefit of communities. And I just want to be real, $88 million, that's not going to solve the big problems that everyone's talking about. That's not going to make racial inequity in our city disappear. It's not going to end homelessness. It's not enough to do the work of real systemic change. And the projects identified in the letter, and hopefully the projects that will be identified in partnership with the CAO, are all going to be good uses of this money that are going to move us in the right direction. And we have an opportunity now to spend this money 9 months after the murder of George Floyd. It's been 9 months. We still haven't spent these dollars. And I think we have an opportunity now to take the lessons from this process and to make sure that we do it right next time, to do more as we step in to the next fiscal year. I also want to echo some of the callers that called in and said that there was a real mandate from this moment to invest in Black-led and Black-serving organizations. And, I'm eager to in this round and the remaining amount of funding and in future work that the city is doing on these issues, to honor those demands and to make sure that we're doing the work to really address the issues that came up last year. To me, one piece of it that has also been missing is really that this idea that I think became widely acknowledged last year, which was that if communities were to make decisions about how the city or how the country would respond to social challenges, that these investments would look really different from the expansion of the carceral state that we've seen here in Los Angeles and in the country overall. And I think we have an opportunity now to let communities participate in that decision-making. And there was a call for that this last summer. And I want to encourage us to also remember that call and to use this opportunity to do more of the real, robust, and institutionalized participatory budgeting work that I know we can do. I also just wanted to end by thanking all of the intervention workers who called in earlier today. The risks you're taking in your work are enormous, especially during COVID. And I just wanted to thank you for the work that you're doing and for taking the time to make your voices heard today. So thank you very much.
Mr. Cedillo?
Madam President, thank you for your leadership on this matter. Thank you for your work in collaboration with the council. Thank you for your incredible tolerance and discipline throughout this incredible COVID year and era. This is an important decision for us. It is not the only important decision we will make. It is a decision where, as my colleague noted, we cannot afford to make perfection the enemy of the good. It is not a perfect bill, and it will not, it cannot solve all the social ills of our society. But it is definitely an incredible step forward, and it has to be acknowledged for that. You know, we should be doing a public health department, and that is the work for us as we move forward. We should be doing a mental health department, and that is the work for us to go forward. We have an opportunity to construct some pilots and some hybrids that work with the county. We have some smart investments to make. That does not go away with this vote. Those opportunities do not go away with this vote, and we should move forward. Bringing in county public health workers, integrating it into our 911 system, working with existing programs like our crisis response teams. Those opportunities and responsibilities do not go away with this vote. They will remain in front of us, and we should pursue those as the foundation of establishing a city mental health department. We should and we must create a youth department, one that is funded, one that for a city this large puts us in standing with other governmental entities throughout this state and this nation, so that we can gather the resources to make sure that the young people of our city have all the support that they can from this city. We should continue to fund the Department for Human and Civil Rights, and it should be funded in a very robust manner. There is no question about that. We are not doing that in this vote, but those opportunities and responsibilities remain in front of us. And that is the work for us to do after this vote. I suggest that we take this vote because it is a first step towards progress. It is a nod to the organizing and the mobilizing that took place. It is a nod to the tragic history that exists, relationships between Black and brown communities and the law enforcement community in the city, in this state, and in this nation. And so we should take this vote. Yes, there are arguments about structure and process, and we know that. We are here 15 members of the city council. We ran to represent our districts. We all have a broader vision for the city, the state, and the nation. But the fact of the matter is, the structure of our democracy is not a town hall meeting. It's not a call-in culture. It's not simply mobilization or organizing, but it's also governance. And the structure that we govern in is the structure of the Los Angeles City Council. And we are those 15 council members who have that responsibility. The responsibility of governance, which is more significant and more challenging than the activity that's taking place, because it entails the responsibility of creating structures and foundations for future progress of our city and our society. And that's what this vote moves us towards. One step in that direction, a step of governance, a courageous step, an important step as we build our city, as we move forward to ensure that there is structurally, democratically, dignity and respect for all those who reside in our city and in our society. I ask for an aye vote, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. Mr. Harris Dawson?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank members who have engaged in this discussion. I wanted to make a few additional comments and uncharacteristically repeat something that's already been said. My mentor and colleague, Ridley Thomas, read the letter from the mayor. I want to read with emphasis and a little bit of rapidity the second sentence of the third paragraph, which says, I support your plan to expedite this new set of investments without further delay. So it seems to me as if peace has broken out in the city of Los Angeles, and we are in a position to move forward and move forward swiftly. I will add, for a point of discussion, though. Right, exactly. I will take for a point of discussion because I think it's important to engage and struggle a little bit here. There are those who are criticizing the process that we have for this set of expenditures, and those criticisms are legitimate, I think very well taken. But everybody's saying we should do it the regular way. Well, guess what? In my district, people hate the regular way, because the regular way is what produced a budget last year that cut every department in the city, with the exception of a few, one of them being police. They raised police by, that process raised police spending by over $100 million. And nobody talked about any money that we didn't have. That's what the regular process produces. The regular process produced the disinvestment that we all say we're against. So to hold up that process as if it's somehow got some special virtue and it's going to produce justice is ahistorical at best. And so I think we ought to step away from that and say, yes, we can do what has been done better, but that is not a reason to step back from it today. I will quote the Temptations, don't look back. I ask for an aye vote.
Madam Clerk, I call for the question. Let's go ahead and call the roll on this item.
Madam President, I have my hand raised. Point of order.
Mr. Buscaino?
Thank you, Madam President. Members.
Did you have your hand raised? I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
And the question's been called, so go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President and members. Public safety, as you often have heard me say before this body, is a core responsibility of local government. Everything hinges on it. If people don't feel safe, they will not want to live here. They will not want to work here. They won't want to visit here. We should not have to choose between funding patrol officers who respond to 911 calls and funding innovative public safety pilots. We need both. The action before us, members, is like cutting ambulances to fund healthcare. For example, many of our residents would benefit from the expansion of LAPD's Community Safety Partnership Program across the city lines. Crime doesn't stop at the council district lines. Gang activity doesn't stop at council district lines. Since the council last approved this, I've heard a lot of community members who were not satisfied with the public vetting of where this money is headed. Now, I do wish we would have done a better job in getting input from our communities. The original intent of this money is to invest in communities of color. And obviously, reinvesting in our communities of color is one of the most important things we ought to be doing. Question we have to ask ourselves, has this process uplifted the voices and needs of our communities? Has this process ensured we get the most value for every dollar spent? As a member of this council's leadership, I take some responsibility for this. We must live up to our commitment we have made to our communities to do everything we can to improve their daily lives, not just in how we invest these one-time monies, but how we make all the policy and budget decisions. So as every council office moves forward with allocating these monies, I urge you all to commit to a clean and transparent process as we choose which organizations and nonprofits will follow through on the promises that we've made, because their success is our success.
Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, members. Look, I think when we face something like this, the press and others like to make this out into some sort of a shootout, some sort of a battle among members, a battle between the council and the mayor and so on. And so I just want to say how much I appreciate that Mr. Ridley Thomas and Mr. Harris Dawson both just read the letter that the mayor produced today. I don't think the dramatic shootout part here is if it was ever the case, it certainly isn't the case today, because this council voted on an allocation formula in December. It was an imperfect formula that your Budget and Finance Committee reported out to the council. It was absolutely an imperfect formula. And any formula that we ever produced would be imperfect. No matter what sort of formula we came up with, would not produce equity for everyone in Los Angeles. I will say that I think part of what the mayor and many members have talked about is the importance of having a citywide program that is not limited to council districts. And I wholly agree with that. We have already done much of that. As the council president said off of the top in her opening comments, one of the things that we did first was ensuring that we set aside some of this funding to preserve existing citywide services that otherwise would have been cut, that impact disproportionately impact disadvantaged communities. We preserved the targeted local hire program. We preserved summer youth hiring. Those are all citywide programs with citywide benefits. And so some of that work has already been done. I'm one of those that has the same kind of concerns about political boundary divisions that Mr. Blumenfield so well articulated. But I was also very persuaded by members, notably Mr. Harris Dawson. I very well remember a speech that he gave when we took this up in response to something that I had said, which was very persuasive when he talked about the compounding effect of concentrated poverty and how geography does matter and causes people who are otherwise similarly situated to no longer be similarly situated. So there is a need for geographically based investments in disadvantaged communities. But there's also a need for greater investment in citywide programming as well that do the same things. These are not mutually exclusive goals. So I think that as we move forward, if we move forward with the appropriations that are before us today, that certainly does not preclude us from continuing to develop, in part based on some of these pilot programs, more citywide programming that addresses the issues that all of us on the city council and the mayor and others in the city family care deeply about. So I just wanted to make clear that these are not mutually exclusive goals. And I think that was made quite clear by the mayor's comments this morning, that we all are in agreement on these basic objectives. With regard to the veto part of this vote, let's keep in mind that what the council did previously did not include a spending plan. Our action was the equity distribution formula that, as I say, was imperfect. And I think all of us can agree it was imperfect. But that's the framework by which these appropriations are being made today. So in effect, the months that we've had since December to further consider the spending plan for 2 new members of the council to come on board that weren't here then, to consider the spending plan, for the community outreach that each of the members have done, all of us, honestly, to develop a council-specific spending plan. I think that time has given us a much greater opportunity for a much more robust community outreach that I assume all of us have done. It's very clear to me by the thoughtfulness and the quality of what was produced in the appropriations that are before us today that that has been done by many of us, and it will be done by the rest of us as we move forward with this process. So I just want to make clear that the vote today is really in support of some very important programs that most of us have said today we very much agree with, including the mayor and including, I think, every member who's spoken. But for those who are critical of this because it doesn't encompass a larger plan that affects the whole city, I hear you, I agree with you. I think most members agree that we need to do that too. But that isn't what's before us today.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, no.
Bonin.
Bonin, no.
Buscaino.
No.
Cedillo. Councilmember Cedillo.
Cedillo, aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
No.
11 ayes and 4 noes. The motion is adopted.
Okay, let's move on to item number 4. This was called special by Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. Colleagues, when community members see what they interpret as random demolitions in their neighborhoods, it causes real distress and it's puzzling, especially to people who value quality architecture and quality aesthetics and design, whether in a residential area or commercial area. That is why in 2013, I created an ordinance that required a 1-month public noticing on demolitions of any kind, just so that there could be public notice and fact-finding, et cetera, and in the interest of transparency on why demolitions occur and what purpose they serve. Now we need to take this a step further, and this item does just that. Creating a demolition deterrence ordinance would create real financial penalties for developers and others that deliberately and knowingly destroy historic resources, eligible historic resources, and RSO units. The current punitive system does not go far enough. It's just a cost of doing business. It's a slap on the wrist. Residents in Silver Lake understand this very deeply, as experienced by the destruction of a quaint shop on Silver Lake Boulevard a couple of years ago. And it was by the property owners that this really wonderful store called Yoke was renting from. They just simply started demolishing this lovely little shop, and they were willing to pay the penalty for doing so without a permit. So sadly, we probably have these stories in all of our districts, and about a special building or a special structure that means something to the neighborhood. And so many of these buildings are partially or fully demolished without a permit at all. So we need to up the ante. All too often, this news is followed by anger, as I mentioned. And the monetary fee for this is so paltry that there's no incentive to prevent people from wanting to do this just as a price of doing business. I want to really thank the Plum Chair, Marquise Harris Dawson, for your work on enhancing this and making it stronger. And I look forward to this coming back to the council. So I ask for your aye vote, and I thank the entire Plum Committee for your work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to thank you, Councilmember O'Farrell. Your points are spot on. There are instances in all of our districts where something like this has happened, and unfortunately, when the developer makes a financial decision, do I just accidentally, knock over this building that has historical significance and then just pay the fine? It really isn't punitive right now. And I think this is a measure that goes that extra step in making sure that we ensure that, that we save the history that I think is so important in the city of Los Angeles. We need to, protect what that is. And, while I know a lot of my district is new, a lot of my district was where old Hollywood used to live. And I'm trying my hardest to preserve these old homes that really gave an example of what the Valley used to look like 50, 60, 70 years ago. So I want to thank you for this. And I also want to thank our Plum Chair for, like you said, making this as strong as possible to make sure that we hold these developers accountable.
Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to again thank Mr. O'Farrell, Mr. Lee, and everybody on the Plum Committee for working on this. The residents of University Park South and West in the 8th District are cheering loudly for you. This is a very, very devastating problem in the neighborhoods around the University of Southern California. Frankly, my district, Mr. Price's district, Mr. Cedillo's district, they knock down historic homes and then they go, oops. And, we kind of tap them on the wrist and say, don't you do that again. And then they go down the block and they do it again. So this is a very important measure. It's also, again, very nice to have the opportunity to work on something together that affects far-flung parts of the city, from Mr. Lee's district to my district to the heart of the city in the 13th. And we've even heard cases as far away as San Pedro, the same thing. So again, thank you, Mr. O'Farrell, for your leadership and insistence on this measure.
Okay, thank you, members. Let's go ahead and vote on this item.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas. Councilmember Ridley Thomas. Rodriguez.
Aye.
14 ayes. This item is adopted.
Okay, let's move on to item 33, call special by Mr. O'Farrell for comments.
Thank you, Madam President, colleagues. Thank you for bearing with me. But this is another really important one. As of yesterday, 512,014 Americans had lost their lives in the last year due to the coronavirus, and over 52,000 of these deaths were in California. In just 12 months, we went from knowing a friend of a friend that might have the virus to collectively losing loved ones and community members too early. According to the LA Times, 74% of those that died in California were 65 and over, and our communities of color continue to be hit the hardest by the virus and are seeing the lowest incidences of vaccination. We have real issues. So in March, I'm so happy that we acted expeditiously and collectively to shelter thousands of those most at risk, homeless individuals through Project Room Key, and now transitioning to acquiring property through Project Home Key. President Biden's American Rescue Plan, which recently passed through the House and is pending in the Senate, in combination with the directive to allow 100% FEMA reimbursement for costs related to the pandemic, including non-congregate shelter, is an opportunity that our city must enthusiastically support to expand Project Home Key. Multiple efforts supporting expanding Project Home Key are ongoing. The 100% FEMA reimbursement usage in the American Rescue Plan, but the adoption of this resolution will show a unified council voice to Sacramento that we need to support this and every other measure we possibly can. I've spoken to various members of the legislature, including the head of the LA delegation, which agreed to support our asks, and this item will allow the mayor to expedite discussions between the city and the state to ensure that non-congregate housing dollars come to Los Angeles. So colleagues, I ask for your aye vote on this resolution so we can speak with one strong, resolute voice that we need that funding from Sacramento so that we can accelerate our Project Home Key in the way that I just described. Thank you so much, Madam President.
Thank you. Mr. Harris Dawson?
I never lowered my hand from the last item. Sorry, Madam.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and vote on this item. Item 33. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
15 ayes. This item is adopted.
Okay, members, let's move on to item 27. Members, last year when we received the CARES funding, I should say, this council took quick action to establish programs that would provide direct assistance to Angelenos on rent, food, childcare, utilities, small businesses, and nonprofits. We launched the biggest rental assistance program in the nation. And because of our $103 million commitment to rental assistance, we were able to help over 49,000 families with their rent. Even with the level of assistance and commitment from this city council, there are still thousands upon thousands of families that need our assistance. We funded these programs because we knew it was the best way to help Angelenos through this pandemic. A roof over their heads, childcare, so that their families didn't have to be forced between work and their families or their internet for their kids as they continue to learn from home, and at the same time provide some relief for their businesses. In December, the stimulus package showed that the federal government finally realized that this is a framework that we need to lift up communities and help them through this pandemic. The stimulus package acknowledges what the city council has done already, and which is these types of programs are what's working for families that need to make it through this pandemic. As a result of this package today, we will launch the second round of COVID-19 emergency rental assistance program with $259 million funding. With $259 million, we'll be able to provide direct rental assistance, more funding for our eviction defense program, and properly fund the outreach and the assistance with the application, which is something that we knew we needed to do from earlier in the pandemic. The city's unemployment still continues to be over 10%, and families in our city owe anywhere between $4,000 to $7,000 worth of back rent. This assistance is not only a lifeline for families that desperately need our help to be able to pay their rent, but also it's a direct help to the mom and pop landlords who are struggling to make their mortgages. This is an aid that is also important to our city as a whole as we continue to address our homeless crisis. We all know that it is significantly cheaper to keep families housed than it is to build new housing. So HSID estimated that with this new the new round of funding will be able to approximately help 64,000 families with this new round of rental assistance. The department has worked really hard over the year to make sure that we spent every single dollar by the end of the year like it was mandated by the federal government. And as a result, we were the only city to have spent all of our rental assistance money. So kudos to the department for doing a fabulous job. I know Ann is probably listening in. I just want to thank our general manager, Ann Sewell, for doing such an amazing job and being such a courageous leader, as well as Ana Ortega, who has really been the driving force behind our rental assistance program. She's just been phenomenal to work with. And I also want to applaud Council Members Rahman and Bonin for working on this next round of a rental assistance program. And Mr. O'Farrell, I have to mention, you've definitely been a leader in terms of trying to help establish this program from the onset. So I want to really thank you for your partnership as well. This program is just one step closer to our recovery and making sure that our families feel supported and are able to pay some of their rent. So with that, members, I ask for an aye vote. As amended, there was an amendment that was introduced, so let's go ahead and call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price. Councilmember Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
15 ayes. This item is adopted as amended.
Okay, members, let's move on to item number 20. This was amended by Mr. De Leon. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
Blumenfield.
Blumenfield, aye.
Bonin.
Bonin, aye.
Buscaino.
Aye.
Cedillo.
Aye.
De Leon.
Aye.
Harris Dawson.
Yes.
Koretz.
Aye.
Krikorian.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Martinez.
Aye.
O'Farrell.
Aye.
Price.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Price.
Aye.
Rahman.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
15 ayes. This item is adopted as amended.
Okay, Madam Clerk, what's before us now?
Madam President, Council has motions for posting and referral. Motions will be posted on the City Clerk's website shortly after the meeting for the public's viewing. To subscribe to receive copies of today's motions to your email, please visit clerk.lecity.org.
Okay, posted and referred. Members, do you have any announcements? Any adjourning motions? Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, when I mention this name, many of you are going to know it, especially Mr. Koretz, Ivy Bottini of West Hollywood. Ivy Bottini is a giant in the LGBTQ community, and I adjourn today in her memory. She was a pioneering lesbian and feminist activist and a larger-than-life leader in the movements for women's rights and LGBTQ rights. Ivy passed away on Thursday, this past couple of Thursdays, Thursday the 25th, at the age of 94. Ivy Bottini was born in 1926 on Long Island and earned a certificate in advertising, graphic design, and illustration from the Pratt Institute School of Art in Brooklyn in the 1940s. She became a fierce activist in the women's movement in the 1960s, alongside other pioneers like Betty Friedan, Muriel Fox, Ty Grace Atkinson, and Flo Kennedy. In that decade, Ivy helped found the New York City chapter of the National Organization for Women. And in 1969, she put her graphic design talents to good use when she designed the NOW logo, the same iconic NOW logo that is still used to this day. Ivy led a landmark action in 1970 when she and other members of NOW took a ferry to the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor. On the ferry, they had stuffed fabric under their clothes as if they were pregnant. When they got to Lady Liberty, they unfurled and connected their various pieces of fragments, which read, "Women of the world unite." Ivy brought her indomitable spirit to Los Angeles County when she moved here in 1971, and she was at the forefront of the LGBTQ rights movement here in Los Angeles. Her activism was celebrated and well known, and she co-founded the Coalition for Human Rights, the Los Angeles Lesbian Gay Police Advisory Board, the AIDS Network LA, and AIDS Project Los Angeles. Ivy was a longtime member of the City of West Hollywood's Gay and Lesbian Advisory Board, and she also created and hosted the first lesbian gay radio show on a mainstream network, KHJ, here in Los Angeles. Ivy was instrumental in defeating homophobic ballot initiatives decades before Prop 8. In 1978, she served as the Southern California Deputy Director of No on 6, otherwise known as the Briggs Initiative, which would have banned gays and lesbians from teaching in California public schools. During the AIDS epidemic, she led the No on 64 initiative. Had that proposition passed, it would have amounted to the firing and quarantining of people with HIV or AIDS. Ivy had many talents in addition to graphic design. She was a performer and a writer. She was the author of the book, The Liberation of Ivy Bottini, a memoir of love and activism. Ivy co-founded the nonprofit Gay and Lesbian Elder Housing, which in 2007 developed Triangle Square in the heart of Hollywood in the 13th District. Triangle Square is the first affordable housing complex for LGBT seniors in the United States. I have known and worked with the Triangle Square community for many years, as did my predecessor, Eric Garcetti. I am so proud to represent them on this city council, and I'm so proud of the rich role the 13th District has played in the history of the LGBTQ movement at large. This is definitely a huge part of Ivy's legacy. I last saw Ivy a couple of years ago. I had met her in the 1990s. And I last saw her a couple of years ago when I participated in a staged reading of Dear Harvey, which was produced by the Celebration Theater. And Ivy, at the end of the staged reading, was sitting there in the audience, and she had an aura around her, and people were lining up just to greet Ivy Bottini. That's how much deep respect people had for this woman. She soon then moved to Florida to live with her daughter, Lisa. She went into hospice in early February before passing away last week. Ivy Bottini leaves behind a remarkable legacy, and we celebrate a life that was both long and immensely impactful. She lived loudly and proudly, and her courage, passion, and activism are inspirations to us all. Ivy, thank you for leading with the fearlessness and for opening so many doors for the LGBTQ community in our country and our world. We'll carry on the fight from here.
Thank you. Mr. Koretz?
Thank you, Madam President. Yeah, I'd like to add that I knew Ivy Bottini for many, many years. I'm trying to think back to when we first met, and I think it was in the effort to fight the Briggs Initiative in 1978, which she played a more significant role certainly than I did, but I was also a volunteer activist. And she was probably the most iconic lesbian in Los Angeles history. Just a great individual, someone who was a good friend for many years, very active in West Hollywood, where I was involved in city government there for 16 years, and she was involved in the first cityhood election and helped elect Valerie Torino, the first open lesbian mayor of an American city, which I helped to run her campaign in that first election. Probably Ivy and Morris Kite are the two most significant LGBT leaders in West Hollywood and Los Angeles history. She'll be a huge loss. I probably took her being around for granted since it seemed like she would live forever, but very sorry to see her passing at age 94, but it was a life very well lived and a lot of accomplishments and activism, and may she rest in peace. And also, Madam President, I have, and I'd like to be added on to that, if I might. I have an adjournment I'd like to add in memory of Jean K. Marshall, who passed away suddenly and peacefully on February 21st in Charlotte, North Carolina, at age 70. She was born April 9th, 1950 in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and she attended Thiel College in Greenfield, Pennsylvania, majoring in music. And during that time, she was the lead singer in an R&B band called Kindred Spirits, and they played throughout the Pittsburgh and Ohio area. She dropped out of college to have her daughter, Catherine, and took all manners of jobs from seamstress to welder to a matron at a local jail. In 1980, she finished her undergrad degree, receiving a BS in psychology from Wilson College. But her sense of adventure moved her to Los Angeles, where she decided to apply to the LAPD. And in 1981, the LAPD was under a federal mandate to hire more women and minorities, and Jean was among the first African-American women recruited to join the LAPD. And although she didn't join the military like her brothers and father, she often expressed that this experience was just as tough. Jean had a strong sense of justice and doing the right thing and helping those most in need. And her days on the force began in the North Hollywood division of the LAPD. And my former staffer and a good friend of hers, Tanya Bradkin, asked me to share a few of the memories briefly that she shared with friends and family about her time on the force. There was a time when she took a call from at Eddie Van Halen's house, and before she left, she proceeded to sing him her version of Pretty Woman, which he appreciated. There was a time when she and her partner ended up on the local news for their response to a 911 call. And at times she chased a suspect on foot while breathlessly updating her colleagues, which they thought was pretty funny at the time. She was an everyday hero, a single mom trying to make a better life for her child. She was a small group of women that helped pave the way for future generations on the LAPD. Her legacy in the department may have been short, but the impact she made and the impact that experience made on her lasted a lifetime. She had a couple other careers after leaving the LAPD. She earned a Master's of Administration of Justice and worked and had a successful career in corrections in Washington, D.C. and in Maryland. She did a lot of work with the formerly incarcerated that she helped to get jobs in the community. And then at 50, she pursued another dream of teaching, went on to teach middle school in Washington, D.C., and ultimately in Charlotte, North Carolina, to be with her daughter and grandchildren. And she continued to teach middle school and at a local community college. It was her gift of compassion because it allowed her to connect with people from all walks of life that really made her lifetime. She always made everyone feel included and important, especially those that were treated as outcasts by many others. Some of Jean's happiest memories were serving the city of Los Angeles. And so Jean's family thanks the city of Los Angeles for honoring her memory and her contributions. May she rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Mr. Willie Thomas?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to ask that we adjourn in memory of Vernon Jordan. I acknowledge the second of both Mr. Harris Dawson and Mr. Price. I'd like to invite the balance of the council to join in this adjournment. Passed away just yesterday at the age of 85. Vernon Jordan was born in Atlanta, Georgia on August the 15th, 1935. Grew up in the segregated South, being the only Black student in his class at DePauw University, year of 1957. He attended Howard University School of Law, where he began his legal career combating segregation and working on cases that advocated for African American students. He also worked as a field director for the NAACP and as the director of the Southern Regional Council for the Voter Education Project, then moved on to become president of the National Urban League, where many of us came to know of his considerable skills and his outsized witness for equal opportunity, for civil rights, and more. His influence in the fight for civil rights made a lasting impression and contribution in pushing this nation forward towards some modicum of justice. And I have to say that it is our own John W. Mack, who headed the Los Angeles Urban League, that caused me to be acquainted with Vernon Jordan, and we were both saddened, both Vernon and I, upon John Mack's passing, as was our entire city. But he kept pushing, moved from civil rights to equal opportunity. He worked as an advisor of consequence to both Bill and Hillary Clinton, and made his mark in New York as a business leader, as well as work that he was doing in Washington, D.C. and other parts of the nation. It should be noted that he was no stranger to confrontation and even the threat of death, because it was in 1980, Madam President, that he survived an assassination attempt by one who was an avowed racist, who was charged but later acquitted in trial. And despite all of that, which came forward, and after the trial had ended, the attempted assassin boasted about being the gunman who chose to try and take Vernon Jordan's life. He was the recipient of many prestigious awards, not the least of which would have been the Spingarn Medal, that which is the NAACP's highest award for a lifetime of social justice and activism, for his work in seeking truth and justice and being prepared to speak truth to power. So it is that tall timber has fallen. In the person of Vernon E. Jordan, major figure in the history of civil rights, social justice, business, United States of America. He's survived by his wife, daughter, 2 grandsons, and 3 stepchildren. May Vernon Jordan rest in peace and in power. And may we never, ever forget his contribution and his legacy. Madam President.
Mr. Harris Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councilmember Ridley Thomas, for bringing forward this important adjourning motion. I want to just add a couple comments to the great recitation of his storied career and commitment and contribution that you just shared with us. And that is an editorial notice, someone who observed Vernon Jordan. He was one of the first political figures that you could see in public view. And he did a few things that are important. One of them is he perfected what is now referred to as respectability politics. Yeah. He perfected the craft to the point where he made contributions that live with us forever. So when you see a corporation and they have a diversity and equity division or vice president, think of Vernon Jordan, because he is the one in the tradition of our own Los Angeles' own John Mack. He is really the one that went into the corporate sector and taught them a thing or two about diversity and the benefits of equity in their operations. And so all of us have a reason to be grateful for the gift of Vernon Jordan, and I'm proud to join in the adjourning motion of him today.
Thank you, Mr. Harris Dawson. Any other adjourning motions? Seeing none, our meeting is adjourned.